Welcome to another episode of The New Normal. This is the podcast about how we are adjusting to the new ways of work, communications, and how we design experiences in this new digital world. I don't know if it's really new, but we're looking at it through new eyes right now. I've got a guest today from Pennsylvania, in the United States, Tim Gogal. I have to out, we are both colleagues at the same company here, but that's not why we're coming together here. Actually, a colleague of his pitched him to me saying, I think you need to talk to this guy. This is the first time we've been together today, ever. And I'm really excited to hear what Tim's got to say. Tim, welcome to the show. And could you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me. So yeah, name's Tim Gogal. Been in this industry for quite a long time. I won't go back to how long, but for me, the focus was always on understanding what the customer expectation needs to be, and working very closely to take advantage of how businesses are doing things and how technology is enabling things, and tying all that together to make sure at the end of the day the customer experience is exactly what is expected from a particular brand.
So since we've never interacted before, I've got to ask you some warm-up questions just to see how flexible, how good you are on your feet. Are you more of an old-fashioned guy or a Guinness guy?
I'm an old-fashioned guy.
All right. Next one, is it muscle cars or sports cars?
Muscle cars. That's an interesting question because I have a 2016 Ford Mustang sitting in my garage right now.
Oh.
It's about 700 horsepower. So I kind of think it's a little bit of both.
It's
not exotic sports car, but
okay.
muscle and sports.
I'm sitting in Germany. When I'm thinking sports cars, I've got a different picture. Are you a hockey guy or a football guy?
Football guy.
Football guy. All right. I guess coming from Pennsylvania, you've got to be there. So last warm-up question. Tell me, what has the smartphone done to customer experience?
It makes it immediate.
Yeah.
It puts corporate brands, not just necessarily corporate brands in general, at the fingertips of the person using the device. So if the brand experience isn't giving that personal experience immediately, they're missing the ball.
So let's go down that one. The world gets presented with cases and scenarios of brands reacting well and sometimes not so well. Often we get the negative examples more often of where they're not interacting well. And I don't just mean tweets and stuff like that. And we're all consumers ourselves, right? I spend a lot of time either between my tablet here or my phone is with me almost all day. Maybe that's not a healthy thing, but it is how I interact, and how I interact with brands is through those devices as much as possible. What are some of the really just fundamental challenges that you see that brands are having in addressing this mobile customer?
I think it really comes down to, go figure, right in the middle of a podcast, I get an Amazon package delivered to my house. But it comes down to the immediacy. You have to deliver what a customer wants the way they want it. And when you're looking at legacy corporations or big corporations, unlike Amazon, they have their tried and true products and services, and they expect consumers to just use them. The big brands have their tried and true processes to how they sell products and services, and they just expect customers to be okay with that. When you look at the Amazons of the world, the reason why Amazon is what Amazon is because they created a business process that supports exactly what a customer needs, right? And that to me is the fundamental change right now. You got to give the experience that the customer wants the way they want it, knowing that there's multiple customers with multiple different expectations, right?
Mm-hmm. But is it, Amazon does it really well. I've talked about this at talks. I think it was, 2 winters ago, right before Christmas, whatever this would have been, 2018. I had ordered something on Amazon in November. By early December, I got a delivery email notification that the company was unable to deliver the package because there was there was no name on the doorbell or some message like that. And I've been living in the same house here for a very long time. I did go down and check the doorbell to see if the name had fallen off, which it hadn't. And I wrote back. I tried to write back. There was no way to respond to that email. That's part of the design, I guess. So I went online and tried to find ways to contact Amazon, which isn't easy, but that's probably also part of
By
design.
design. Yep,
Part
by
of
design.
design. But I did finally get to a telephone number that popped up on screen. And it says, you can call this number. And I'm telling the story differently than I would tell it in a talk, because I built it a little bit more interesting here. But the long story short, I dialed the phone number. It rang, like, I think it was one ring, if I remember correctly, just one ring. A person answered the call, and they greeted me by name. I didn't enter, an IVR. I didn't put in my customer number, and I'm almost sure, because I have separate cell phones, this is a phone that number they'd never seen from me. Now, doesn't mean they did some magic and figured out by reverse lookups or whatever to figure out who it is. But she greeted me. Of course, she asked me one or two security questions, my birth date or something like that, to make sure I was
Sure.
all those protocols you can guess. And the third question I believe she asked me after the security questions was, is this a time relevant delivery? Because it was like a week or so before Christmas. And I was so taken aback by how nice the initial experience was that I got a phone number. Okay, called Amazon. Somebody answered the phone without putting music in for a long time, greeted me by my name, which surprised the heck. And I work in this industry, and I know that's not super simple to do, but okay, they got it done. And then she asked the perfect question, which easily could have been prompted on her screen, not whether she's that smart or not, but just prompted on the screen. She asked the right question, and I said, no, it's not time critical. It was just some lamps I wanted to hang up over the Christmas holiday, because the process had been perfect. Now, knowing how they may have done that, they might be cycling through phone numbers that were presented to me that if I dial within 4 minutes, they pretty much guess it's going to be me. I mean, the technology of how they did it, there's methods and stuff like that, but the idea was so smart. And honestly, probably not that hard to do. They can do it at scale because they have the scale to do it out there. Um,
Sure.
I was amazed. I know the shopping experience at Amazon is simple and easy and one-click buying, and they've mastered it. But they were a digitally born company, right?
Yep.
They
Without
don't
a doubt.
have to deal with the legacy, and I don't mean just technology legacy that we deal with, but it's also
Mindset in general.
that's where I wanted to go. So this is a problem that I know I see in my day job. I just assume it in a lot of businesses I interact with. They haven't gotten the memo yet that the digital customer needs to be addressed differently than the physical customer that comes into the store, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, that example you just walked through from a digital born perspective, right? I think where Amazon changed the game was when you look at how traditional business works, what that traditional customer experience was, it was always dialing that 1-800 number. Dial 1-800 number, my company, and talk to a contact center agent. And that contact center agent is responsible for um, defining the brand, representing the brand.
Right.
But if you think about how antiquated that business process is as a result of the mobile device and the web and cloud and all those things, it just no longer makes sense. And I'll give you my own personal experience that I recently went through. Well, I shouldn't say recently, it was a year or so ago, just showing how broken that process is. So, my story time for me. Uh, I was driving. I was behind the wheel. It was my then girlfriend, now wife, sitting in the passenger seat. We had our dog in the back of our SUV. I was driving down the road, and just by dumb luck, my wife said something funny, made me laugh. I passed out while I was driving.
Oh,
So I knew what was happening. So I tried to slow down and I tried to pull off the road, but ultimately went unconscious. I hit a telephone pole about 40 miles an hour,
oh,
right? Stop and think about all the business processes that are a trickle down effect from that. A, 911 services because there was a car accident. B, secondary, medical um, insurance claims, things like that. Third, had to replace my car. The car was totaled. Fourth, we hit a telephone pole, so the utility services had to be called to replace the telephone pole. Um, We call into uh, our car insurance company, explain the situation. They say, "Don't worry about it. Everything will be taken care of. No, no worries. You're in good hands with us," kind of thing.
Hmm.
About 2 years later, no, about 2 years, got my timing off. About a year later, I get a letter in the mail stating I am being sued by the state of Pennsylvania because there was a discrepancy between the car insurance company and the utility services over the price of the telephone pole replacement. Process had nothing to do with me. I did everything I was supposed to do, but in some back office contact center, call center, business process, there was some form of legal gap, and I become the person responsible for it.
A lot
So
of
as a result of that, I have a public criminal record that shows there was an outstanding lawsuit from the state of Pennsylvania through no fault of my own.
it.
The medical emergency was what it was. I did what I was supposed to do. The processes behind the scenes broke.
Yeah.
And that's a huge personal brand damage as a result of that. I mean, it's not something that you want to go out and publicly say, but I have no problem publicly saying it because I didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
But there is a public record for me that I had an outstanding lawsuit. It just blows my mind. So that is a perfect example of how a company got it wrong, right? And when you look at just the overall approach, it's because it's a legacy mindset. It's dial
Mm.
this 1-800 number, let everything happen behind the scenes. With the digital device and how easy it is to communicate through text or whatnot, just send me some text. Notify me that things are moving along. Notify me that there's a gap in the process so that I'm at least aware, and then I could address it and do what it takes so that something like a lawsuit never has to come to fruition.
So you mentioned notification there a couple of times, and I know this is working in the industry. We know that, and even as not even working in the industry, just as an owner of a smartphone, you know what a notification is, right?
Sure.
Whether it's your weather app telling you that the weather's moving in, or the UPS app telling you a package is going to be, whatever it is, that we understand notifications. And not everybody needs to install an app for every customer that or every company they're interacting with here. But simply notifications can be an email, can be an SMS, right? It's actually old technology we're talking about here, but it's used so little in a proactive sense. It's usually used after the fact that, oh
Always
yeah,
reactive, right?
oh yeah, we're sorry, the power is going to be out now for 6 more hours. Like you knew you were replacing something that you could have warned me before my podcast interview here that my internet might go down, something like
Right.
that.
Right.
To,
Exactly.
which is part of my business here. And why is it just the mindset? Is it money? Is it siloed businesses, or is it just a collection of all of these?
I think it's probably a collection of all of those, but I typically love to blame the mindset, right? That
Mm.
just I always call it culture, right? The way we think, how we were raised. We weren't raised with a smartphone in our hand, but my daughter is. All
Mm.
her friends are. So that smartphone is her identity, right? When she was growing up, and she's now older and out of the house, but when she was in the house, she hits 16 years of age, which is where you're allowed to drive over here. If she were to be punished for something, back then you took away the car. Okay, well, so what?
I know where
You
this
can
is
take
going.
away the car all you want. I'm still connected to all my friends.
Yeah,
If you really want to punish your kid, take away their mobile phone,
yeah.
right? So I think a lot of it has to do with that. I think the legacy mindset doesn't realize how powerful the immediacy of a mobile device, a mobile economy, a digital economy can be. And I think that's where vendors in the technology space have a true opportunity to be differentiated,
Mm.
and brands themselves have an opportunity to be differentiated if they take advantage of that.
So what the technology is all there. Doesn't matter who the vendor is, right? Everybody
Right?
can do just some of the basics. I mean, the Amazon, the whole process there, which was so clever,
Yep.
because my order for the lamps was greater than value X. which put me into a certain priority. Probably if I was just ordering $20 of dog food, I wouldn't have gotten that phone number, obviously, right? But their process was designed to meet all the buttons there. So that's just, I don't know if that's gold standard, but that's a really high bar for a lot of
I
legacy companies to
I
meet.
would have to say they've set that to be the gold standard, right? If anything in their process breaks, including where you get to the point where you have to call into a contact center, that's a broken process.
Sure.
From their lens, you should never have to do that. So again, depending upon how the the I don't know what the right word is, ecosystem is defined,
Mm.
you have access to data. So leverage the data analytics in real time and scrub it to provide the pertinent business information so that when it comes time for a broken process uh, to be fixed, you
Mm.
have everything you need at your fingertips immediately. It shouldn't be reactive. It shouldn't be something you have to dig for. It should be proactive and readily available.
So if we, I think we both agree, it's the mindset plays
Yeah.
a big part of this. There's a couple of ways out of this. One is wish for a horrible pandemic. We didn't do that, but I will say I'm profiting from some of the conversations I'm able to have now that weren't being had uh, 4 months ago, or we were trying to have, which were just not possible. You could hope that CIOs will retire and were replaced by their juniors. So the 59, 63-year-old who's been there for 33 years finally moves off and gives it to whoever it is, the 33-year-old woman who's going to replace them, who has the new mindset. So that's one. We see that happening in some industries out there. That's fine. That's very organic. That's not going to honestly typically be fast enough, because not just the leader can change a whole organization if they've grown up in a certain mindset there. Um, companies can suffer. You think of a who's the movie store VHS rental one that went out of business.
Blockbuster.
Blockbusters, Radio Shack, those kind of companies, you can just see
Yep.
customers walk away. So put them under pressure. That's horrible. That's happening now too, because not enough things are digital. I can't find a local butcher that I can go online and order through. Frustrates the heck out of me. Yes, I can pick up the phone and call them. Yes, I can go there. I'm being a little careful on how many visits I make to certain places out of the house right now, but I'm still willing to go spend $80 on a brisket to get it on the barbecue out there. And I'd like to just know if they're going to have a shipment this week, and I don't want to have to call them. But nobody's online around this region here, so they're struggling there. What sort of techniques are you trying to do, or how are you trying to reset the mindset?
Oh gosh, through a number of narratives. I think for me, one of the easiest narratives to work off of today. I always use the term, innovation through chaos,
Hmm.
um, or when life hands you lemons, make lemonade. Right? Just that mindset. Okay, you know what? Something was thrust upon a particular business, and it's either sink or swim. Adapt and overcome. So there's those societal things that take place that allow those conversations to happen. More importantly, I just think it really comes down to having the conversation with a particular brand and saying, do you truly know what your customers' expectations are? And if you don't, let me help you. Because
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I incorporate into majority of my conversations and when it comes to selling technology is defining the perfect use case or the number of use cases through service design. I think that's something that's typically missed, and it's not adapted enough as a general practice of business. Is taking the time to be empathetic and put yourself as a business owner or salesperson, whatever your professional role is, in the shoes of the person you're trying to please, you're trying to provide that experience for, and build your processes and leverage your technologies that are available based upon those ideation sessions as a result of service design. That's extremely impactful. And what I've seen in looking at just business landscape in general is the companies who have taken those steps, they're the ones that are successful.
Mm.
And then there's the copycats who have have their legacy that they could work off of. But Starbucks as an example, and how they took the time to understand what their customer expectation was, right? Their their initial store out in Seattle was designed to be transactional. Hey, we sell coffee just like every other Joe Schmo down the lane. What makes Starbucks better than any other coffee company? It really comes down to, do you like the flavor of the coffee?
Mhm.
But through this service design approach and them kind of figuring out, hey, what do our customers actually want? They now deliver this gold standard of coffee drinking experience, which is why people are willing to spend $6, $7, $8 a coffee, right? Why, when there's a Starbucks in a hotel, yet there's free coffee in the lobby, people walk past the free coffee because they want to be associated to the brand. They want to be associated to that experience. It creates emotion, right? They've done it right. And there's other examples. Netflix, right? Look what Netflix did to Blockbuster, right? There's several different conversations to be had here. But you see those trendsetters or differentiators providing the experience, and then you'll see other copycats, as I call them, latch on, right? Disney, being what Disney is, has the ability to say, okay, Netflix, you created this new digital economy, this new digital experience. Okay, well, now we're just going to cut you out of it because we own the content, right? So there's that piece too. And you know which is right or wrong, adapt and overcome. If you see that someone has defined a new business process,
Yeah.
mimicking it might not necessarily be a bad thing.
But wait, I mean, Apple's famous for not always being first, right? They say
Right.
you don't have to be the first one. We're just going to be the best, right?
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with mimicking others. There's a digital philosopher, is what he calls himself, here in Germany, who 3 years ago at a call center conference was I just saw it in the brochure. He was at the Congress talking, and his interview there, he talked about why the transformation was happening so slowly. From a German perspective, but it translates everywhere, the U.S. just as well. And his response was basically, companies are just too comfortable. They're not suffering enough. Right? This is 2 years ago, pre-pandemic. A lot of people,
Yep.
there's a different situation today, but back then they were just too comfortable. There wasn't enough pressure on a Marriott from other services out there. There wasn't enough pressure from a Uber to taxi services. That's changed even pre-pandemic, obviously, there in a lot of markets and a lot of places there. I wonder if this situation we're finding ourselves in now is going to. I'm going back to the mindset. Is this going to jog that mindset? And I know that I see it already. There's some changes of, oh yeah, I think my employees can work from home sometimes, or my agents, maybe they'll stay at home for quite a long time, longer than we thought there, where they never would have had those conversations previously. Do you think there's going to be, from our customer experience design and improvement processes point of view, there could be light at the end of this tunnel that could see a golden age of digital customer experience coming out of it?
I think without a doubt. The fact that the example of pressure forcing change, completely agree with it. And in a lot of ways, maybe shame on me for saying this, but it's a shame that something like a pandemic had to force businesses to think different when you've been telling them they needed to think different for the last 3 to 5 years.
Right.
And now you're in a position where it's like, um, I told you so. I told you so. You should have been considering this. You should have maybe spent a little more time listening. And God forbid something like a pandemic happens, and now people are forced to change, right? So one example of pressure right there, of course. But yeah, I mean, I truly believe that. Where I grew up in Pennsylvania, I grew up in the coal regions, and there's an old saying about coal. With enough pressure and time, you'll create a diamond. So there will be several companies that will
Yeah.
shine brighter than they're already shining
Yeah.
once they adapt and to the pressure over time. And then for the flip side of that is pressure crushes things. So there's going to be a lot of companies going out of business too.
I
So it's
think
just
it's weird. I'm laughing when you're also talking about should we be happy at this time, at this moment here, and it's a weird situation to be in. People that are listening to this podcast are going to be in different parts of the world, different situations themselves, and and I empathize for all of those who are not in a good place,
absolutely.
businesses or families or family, whatever it may be. And that's not the point of this podcast. I'm not trying to analyze the global situation here, but having been on the digital customer experience bandwagon for almost 18 years since we had screen pops and things like that, banging that drum like you saying,
Yep.
folks, don't just listen to me, but look at this. Give me time to show you what this is, and it doesn't mean rebuilding the whole wagon. It might just be a new spare tire we can start with here that'll help you move into. I think going back to what you said is slowly changing that mindset. And I've noticed in the 2 years prior to this spring, I started looking at my clients for what I was calling internal influencers. Influencers, that modern term, we see it through Instagram or whatever. But I was looking for the CIO. I'm not going to change fast enough, and I don't have enough years in my career to wait for all these CIOs to retire, because I'll end up retiring at some point. And I think I know change needs to happen. And I think during this time, we're going to see a lot of change happening that needs to happen within 3 to 5 years. Or as you said, so many companies are going to go out of business here. And I was looking for the junior CIO, or maybe even 2 layers down from there, but someone who's excited, it doesn't have to be young.
Yep.
I'm certainly not young, but I'm very digital. Just somebody who's excited, who understands the opportunity there, and basically wants to impress the boss. What's wrong with that, right? If you're willing to listen to a podcast of mine and learn something, or take a connection that you pick up somewhere, try something yourself. I know we could go on and talk of, and we'll do this on another podcast about the API economy, right? The whole world, the connecting of data. You've already mentioned that. That's a wonderful subject we can probably take on a separate podcast. But there's so many opportunities out there which aren't high tech, which aren't really expensive. You can get started for so many things for free, and then go in Monday morning and show it to your boss, and the boss goes, how'd you do that? And they're like, well, I talked to this person, they showed me this, and we can probably do this, and we can set up a proof of concept here within a couple of weeks, not a 6-month project, not with a huge statement of work here. And we can then show your boss, you could look smart too. I've been trying to do that for the last 2 years, because going through the top is important, because that's where often the money is going to be signed there. But that's making just incremental changes from my experience. And I'm trying to find somebody who's underneath there that's going to influence inside the business. I don't know if you've seen similar experiences like that, but going through the top level has been very frustrating.
Yeah, I completely agree. You got to find somebody, like I said, who's not comfortable, someone who's just passionate, right? I've heard it several times as I grew up, and again, maybe it's another. I'll become the king of unpopular opinion here, but uh, I believe it was Donald Trump that I originally heard it from.
Yeah, I'm going to title the podcast.
But I believe it was Donald Trump who said, if you have a job where you're doing something you're passionate about, you'll never work a day in your life.
Hmm.
Now, he probably took that from someone, and it's been regurgitated several times, but that was he was the person I remember hearing it from first.
Mm-hmm.
And he's exactly right. If you look at people who are in these positions and have these opportunities and they're passionate about it, they're the game changers. They're the change agents you want to work with. I can tell you from my experience, I am extremely passionate about this customer experience space. I'm extremely passionate about the digital economy and how we can really evolve and revamp businesses. And that's why I'm so bullish in getting the message out there. Again, it's such a shame that we had to go through this pandemic for the world to teach us that lesson, when we already knew what the lesson is. Just for whatever reason, it was falling on deaf ears.
Hmm.
You know?
Well, we'll see if that's unpopular decision. I don't think. I think it's right. I wear my passion for customer experience design, digital customer experience on my arm. It's huge. It's important. It's our future, even now more than we may have thought of 3 months ago. With all the things we're trying to do online, because we're trying to minimize contacts, which is a great thing at this point. It doesn't have to stay that way forever, but I think we're going to find ways of doing business, and they need to be designed well. And I know that's something you're very passionate about. I've seen articles. Tim, where can people find out more about you? I know you're online on Instagram. Your wife says you don't post often enough, but where else can people find out more about Tim?
I'm all over social media. I have a Facebook account, Instagram, LinkedIn is probably the best place.
Good.
So you don't get to see all of my love for various bourbons and tequilas. I don't post that stuff on LinkedIn. I post my love for changing the game of customer experience there. So that's probably the best place, LinkedIn.
I'm very happy that we got a chance to connect here today. And thank you for being on my podcast. And I'm happy we connected. Being colleagues, maybe we should share some of our experiences more often and not just.
Yeah, I completely agree. I can tell you share the same experience.
Back to you on the API economy, because I think that's a subject we could go a little bit deeper on and uncover a little bit to take some of the mystery out of it. It sounds complicated. It's really not. If you spend a little bit of time with it, it's quite simple. And there's a lot of ways to get early experience in it, and I think we'll have to schedule another one later this summer. I guess it'll.
Sure. Love to do this again. This was fun.
Thanks for being here, Tim.
You bet. Thanks for having me.